Ever wondered why St. Quartz in FGO looks the way it does? Like, why isn't it just a simple crystal, a shiny cube, or even a glowing orb? Some people might say it's because the shape shows complexity and variation, or maybe you've seen that one bit from Learning with Manga, where Altera thinks that St. Quartz grows from the ground and starts popping out little buds. Honestly, that could be true. It's fate. We've seen weirder. But hear me out. What if I tell you that the design actually has everything to do with the one and only Da Vinci being part of Chaldea? Back in the day, the real Leonardo da Vinci made some super detailed illustrations for Luca Pacioli's book De Divina Proportione, which literally means the divine proportion. The whole book is basically about the golden ratio and how it shows up everywhere. In nature, geometry, art, architecture, the application, and how beautiful it is from both a mathematical and even some religious perspective. One of the illustrations in that book is called Octohedron Elevatus. It's a geometric shape based on the golden ratio, and over the years it eventually became one of the early versions of a polyhedron we now know as the Stella Octangula. Yes, that's basically the base design for the St. Quartz we use in the game. Now remember, the Da Vinci we know in FGO always chased beauty in both her inventions and her art. She even said it herself. That's also why she used the Mona Lisa as her base form, because to her, Mona Lisa was the ideal representation of beauty. So, if we go back to the original question, the answer's honestly kinda simple. Da Vinci sees that shape as a beautiful thing. It reflects the golden ratio, and the golden ratio is beautiful. She loves beautiful designs, beautiful concepts, so of course she went with that. Plus, maybe she picked the Stella Octangula polyhedron version specifically because it has a lot of triangles in it. Now that's the answer if we're looking at it from Da Vinci's side, since she's the one running the Chaldea workshop and, literally sells antique stuff there. But if you think about it, what about the dev's perspective? Yeah, earlier I said St. Quartz is shaped like that because it's based on one of Da Vinci's golden ratio illustrations, and she's obviously obsessed with beauty and symmetry. But I feel like the developers might have had their own reason for picking that shape too. Bear with me, alright? This is a theory channel, so sometimes I'm gonna say things that sound like straight up bullshit to your brain. But this one's kinda interesting, so hear me out. Pacioli explains in his book that the golden ratio has divine meaning. There are 5 reasons why it's considered holy or divine. First, its value shows divine simplicity. Second, the way it's defined involves 3 lengths, which is the same as the Holy Trinity. Third, it's irrational, so it represents how God is beyond human understanding. Fourth, it's self-similar, like God's omnipresence. And fifth, it's tied to the dodecahedron, which is associated with the 5th element, the quintessence. Now, that had some very religious-like meanings, didn't it? And in the game, we use that same triangle or polyhedron shape to summon someone back from the dead. So let me get this straight. The devs want you to use a shape that's packed with religious meaning, one that's every side and numbers that came out of it literally make you think of God, to summon your favorite characters in a game that's infamous for its cursed gacha rates. So yeah, I feel like this is one massive message from the devs that only a few people will ever notice. If we look at it from the devs' perspective, I think we can translate it to this. The only way you can summon your favorite waifu and husbando in the game is by remembering God and praying religiously. Tell me that's not hilarious. By the words of the devs, it probably translates to this: stop complaining about the gacha rate and just pray to your god religiously. And there you go, that's probably your real St. Quartz origin story. Probably. Yeah, just probably. Okay, that was an exaggeration. Even I know they wouldn't go that far just to hide a message and mock us, but it was fun to think about. The polyhedron shape by Da Vinci is real though. It really came from one of his illustrations about the golden ratio. This is what I want to talk about today. I want to talk about those tiny hidden jokes, clever references, or subtle details in FGO that only nerdy people ever notice. These are the kinds of things that, if you know a lot, you'll catch them. Some of this stuff is like inside jokes for geniuses. Only people who know really specific facts will get it. It's like background flexes for those in the know. Let me give you an example from another media. This one's from a TV show my little sister watches all the time, My Little Pony. There's this scene where Twilight Sparkle is thinking hard about time travel, and on the chalkboard, you see a bunch of scribbles and complicated-looking formulas. You know, the usual stuff they show when a character's doing some big brain math. But if you actually look closely, that formula on the board is real. It's an actual time dilation equation. Crazy, right? The show's target audience is clearly kindergarten or elementary school kids. And yet, they threw in a legit scientific detail that only a few nerdy adults who specialize in physics would recognize. No one really had to put that in, but someone did anyway, and only a few people would even notice or appreciate it. That's what makes it fun. This series actually has a bunch of clever little details like that. And since most of us don't notice them, they just fly right over our heads. But today, I'm gonna point them out, so you don't miss all the genius-level Easter eggs hiding in plain sight. Oh, and by the way, I have some other videos like this from a while back. It's kinda old, so the editing might be a bit wonky, but it's still fun to watch. I also have other theory videos you might enjoy. You can click the link in the corner. I already put them all in a playlist to make it easier. Now, while we're on the topic of Da Vinci, let's talk about the iconic paintings remade into craft essences in the game. Of course, we've all seen the Mona Lisa and Bella Lisa CEs, straight-up references to Leonardo da Vinci's iconic painting Mona Lisa. And yeah, you might think that's the only famous artwork reference in FGO, right? I mean, that painting is literally everywhere, so it makes sense. But let me show you a few more that you might have totally missed. And honestly, some of them are kinda surprising. Have you ever pulled the Holy Maiden leading Chaldea craft essence? That one's actually a nod to Liberty Leading the People by Eugène Delacroix. Freaking love the craft essence art, by the way. I mean, it's Paco, so of course that's not surprising. And then there is that CE with Da Vinci and Dr. Roman walking together. This might seem like the usual stroll of these two geniuses, but it was actually inspired by an old painting. Well, you can clearly tell when you see the title. It's called The School of Chaldea, and yep, it's inspired by the School of Athens by Raphael. Even the Merciless 1 CE with John and Gilles is based on the famous sculpture Pietà by Michelangelo. Crazy, right? Turns out the CE artists often take inspiration from iconic real-world art, and most of us probably never even noticed. Alright, now let's move on to another weird detail. This time, we're heading back to everyone's favorite event, the Summer Festival. So, remember when we were in Hawaii during the Summer Servant Fest event, and suddenly every single enemy we fought was just chickens? At first I didn't think much of it. It felt like one of those random, goofy things the devs throw in for fun. But the longer it went on, the more annoying it got. Like, bro, why are there so many chickens? And they all look the same. You might have felt the same way too. But here's the thing, it's actually not that random. The whole wild chickens taking over Hawaii thing is based on real life. It's a legit problem on the island of Kauai. Chickens aren't just crossing roads there. They're chilling in parking lots, walking around beaches, and also living in forests. But what the hell happened? Well, from the local lore, this all started after Hurricane Iwa in 1982 and Iniki in 1992. Those storms blew open a bunch of chicken coops, and the farm chickens escaped into the wild. But Kauai already had chickens that came from Polynesians like 800 years ago. So the two types interbred and made this new hybrid chicken population. And to make it worse, unlike the other Hawaiian islands, Kauai doesn't have mongooses. Why does that matter? Well, because mongooses eat chicken eggs. So, without a natural predator, these chickens go absolutely feral. So yeah, if you were fighting chickens in the middle of a city during the event, that's actually not even a joke. You can literally Google Hawaii feral chicken problem, and the internet will show you the rest. I swear, reality is wild sometimes. Alright, so let's talk about Sherlock Holmes's design in FGO. At first glance, it looks pretty simple. I mean, yeah, there's that lens thing that pops out of his back in his portrait, but other than that, nothing too flashy. But there's actually one small design detail that most people miss. And I think it's super cool because only hardcore Holmes book fans usually catch it. It's the symbol on his shoulder. You've probably seen it and thought, that looks familiar, but had no idea what it's actually called or what it means. It's called the Endless Knot, and it's a major symbol in Tibetan Buddhism. It represents wisdom and how everything in life is interconnected, which honestly fits Holmes's vibe so well. Now you might be wondering, okay, sure the meaning matches, but why would the artist include a Tibetan symbol on a British detective? Feels kinda random, right? One is from London, and the other is from far Asia in Tibet. Well, the answer is simple. Holmes actually did travel to Tibet. Yep. Not many people know this, but during the Great Hiatus, aka the time after Holmes faked his death, he supposedly went on a whole journey through Asia. This is brought up in stories like The Mandala of Sherlock Holmes and Sherlock Holmes, The Missing Years. And if we're going by lore, it makes perfect sense that he could have picked up the Endless Knot symbol while he was there. Maybe as a reminder of the wisdom, calm, and big picture thinking he learned during that time. And going back to the Endless Knot for a sec, it's also the title of a couple mystery-themed books, so there's a chance it's also a low-key shout-out to other detective stories. Pretty dope detail, right? Alright, to the next one. Here's another cool detail that you'd probably only catch if you're into reading historical biographies or literature. To Azuma, the artist behind Qin Shi Huang and FGO, actually dropped some pretty wild insight during the Road to 7 Memorial Illustration event. She said her design for Qin Shi Huang and the Lost Belt arc ended up kind of matching how Borges described him in The Wall and the books, aka La Muralla y los Libros. And before we go on, quick background. Jorge Luis Borges was an Argentine writer, poet, essayist, and overall literary legend. He's super influential in both Spanish and global literature. Now, his essay about Chinese history and the Great Wall was originally written in Spanish and has a bunch of different translations, so let me simplify it a bit so it's easier to digest. In that piece, Borges basically says that the Great Wall of China was built by scholars who had been branded as criminals, people who tried to preserve knowledge. It was all part of Qin Shi Huang's mission to burn the books and erase China's past, making the wall itself a physical symbol of that erasure. And then Borges adds this chilling idea. Just like how Qin Shi Huang wiped out the past, one day someone will come along and destroy his wall, erasing him in return. That person will be like his shadow, or even his mirror. Now To Azuma read that and was like, wait, that's exactly what happens in FGO's Lost Belt story. She said it really hit her how deep the subtext was while she was designing Qin Shi Huang. And honestly, it's kind of mind-blowing. Think about it. Borges saw the Great Wall as a way to erase stories that didn't fit the ruler's version of history. And in FGO, Chaldea prunes lost belts, literally wiping out entire timelines just because they're not the correct path. So in both cases, it's about erasing what doesn't belong. But just like in Borges' essay, all those erased memories and stories might not stay buried. They might come back to haunt the people who tried to forget them. Alright, this is going to be the last one because the video's already getting kinda long. Might drop a part 2 if there's more to cover later on. So, during the board game of the Apocalypse event, there's this really cool moment where Mozart casually references one of his most iconic pieces, the Queen of the Night aria. Now that moment alone is already a nice nod to classical music, but what makes it even more interesting is what happens next. Voyager suddenly jumps in and says he knows that song. At first glance, you might think there's nothing really special behind it. I mean, who doesn't know Mozart's song? But here's the fun part. If you don't know the background behind Voyager's journey into space, you might miss why this moment is low-key brilliant. The Queen of the Night aria is a legendary soprano piece from Mozart's opera The Magic Flute. It's famous for its crazy high notes and how insanely hard it is to sing. And it was one of the songs included in the Voyager Golden Records. Now, if you don't know what the Voyager Golden Record is, it's okay. I'll explain it in an easier way. The Voyager Golden Records were basically these space mixtapes launched into space back in 1977 with the Voyager satellites. They were filled with music, sounds, and images from Earth, kind of like a cultural message in a bottle, meant for aliens or whoever to find. And Mozart's Queen of the Night aria is on that record. Now, Voyager in FGO is portrayed as a kid who loves music, especially live performances. It's his hobby. You can see it in his profile. That means ever since he was launched into space, he's been vibing to kinds of music from Earth, including Mozart's works. That's why he looks a little hyped when Mozart mentions the song. Pretty cool, right? That kind of detail is something only people who really know the backstory of the Voyager space probe would catch. Like, maybe only 1 or 2 people would actually understand why Voyager had that little hype reaction. But they still put it in. I love it when FGO slips in stuff like this. It makes you appreciate how much thought they actually put into the writing. Anyway, what do you guys think? Noticed any other hidden gems like this in FGO? Drop a comment, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, and I'll catch you in the next one.